Fucking damn it, why is this guy doing another jet video? Hallo, ihr heißen Viecher. Willkommen zurück zu Kriegsdonner. Bit of a weird intro, I know, I'm sorry. That was German, don't be scared. Hello you sex beasts and welcome back to War Thunder. Let me present you the Attacker FB.1. This is a British 7.0 battle rating starter naval jet. Now I know, the shape of the fuselage might lead you to believe that this is actually a fat whale. And trust me, I myself almost confused it for your mother as well. But trust me, this thing can actually fly. The Attacker is featured with 4 20mm Mark V Hispano cannons, carrying a total of 624 rounds and being mounted 2 on each wing. Now, this is the first issue I have with this aircraft, and sadly it's not the only issue. We'll go through a lot of issues during this video. You see, the Attacker when it first came out was an aircraft that I actually really enjoyed. I just loved this thing. It was fast, it was resistant, and the guns did work. The Spanish Mark V's back in the day when this thing was released were absolutely freaking awesome. Sadly nowadays things have changed, some for the better, some for the worse. So stick tuned and we'll take a look at them. Alright, first let's talk about the flight performance of this aircraft. Now, the aircraft is quite heavy, as is to be expected from a naval aircraft. As such, the climb rate is rather mediocre alongside with the acceleration. I did find that the low speed acceleration is quite nice, but once you get above those medium speeds and once you actually want to go to your top speeds, you will have struggle getting that speed in. Not only that, the climb rate is a bit on the iffy side. Now, whilst it can climb very well in shallow angles, upwards of 10 degrees at 600 km/h, that it can maintain pretty well. If you try to do anything above that angle, stuff like 15 degrees, 20 degrees, you're going to suffer a lot. This is not an aircraft that gets up to altitude fast, this is an aircraft that gets up to altitude steadily. Now, despite its size and weight, I found the Attacker to be surprisingly maneuverable. Now, the roll rate is nothing spectacular, in fact it's rather average. But the turning rate is not too bad. Now, by no means am I suggesting to use this thing as a dedicated dogfighter. That's not what this thing is. Once you caught low and slow, you are a huge target and you are going to die. But, given the right opponent, stuff like MiG-9s, F-84s, you can actually use the mediocre roll rate and pretty decent turn rate to, at least if not dogfight them, at least evade the enemy. And that's something that I found this thing to be rather good at. Surprisingly so, I had a memory of this thing being rather sluggish. Now, despite being surprisingly maneuverable, there come some issues once you actually get the enemy in front of you. As I mentioned before, this thing is featured with 4 20mm cannons mounted on the wings. There are 2 problems with this. First of all, wing-mounted cannons tend to have problems at very close ranges and very long ranges, since you actually have to use convergence. And by the way, if you are still confused what gun convergence actually means at tier 5, essentially what you're doing, what you're setting with that number is the distance at which the guns converge. But what does that mean? Well, essentially it doesn't make much of a difference on nose-mounted guns, but on wing-mounted guns, as you can see, there's like this space in between, that distance. If you don't set any gun convergence, that distance is going to be maintained, so the bullets are going to fly parallel from each gun on either wing. If you set a gun convergence, however, the bullets are going to travel at an angle towards each other, if that makes any sense, until they all group up together at the distance you've set it at, and after that, they disperse again. What this essentially means is that wing-mounted cannons, or guns in general, have a limited range. As a rule of thumb, you can only fire more or less effectively up to double whatever distance you set your gun convergence to. Which means that either you have to use very long gun conversions to be able to use this thing effectively at range, or you have to use very short gun conversions in order to be able to use this thing at very short ranges, but then you lose any and all ability to hit anything at range. And with these cannons, this is a problem. You see, there's a couple of problems with this aircraft, okay? Now, I will be the first one to admit that I suck at aiming, okay? If you come to me looking for advice on how to be a good marksman with aircraft guns, you're at the wrong address. The problem with myself is that I never played the same aircraft for too long. In fact, if I play the same aircraft for more than 3 hours at a time, something's wrong with me. I switch between aircraft a lot, and as such I switch between guns, calibers, everything a lot. And as such, my aiming style is not the ideal aiming style to be used with these guns. And in fact, I've always had problems with Hispano Mark Vs, or Hispano cans in general. I find their muzzle velocity to be very, very just awkward. Now, an aircraft like the Meteor, for example, I don't tend to have much of a problem, because those guns are nose mounted. But on the Attacker, that's an issue. You see, not only are the guns wing mounted, this thing is also very awkward to handle, actually. Whilst the roll rate is decent, and the turn rate is also quite decent, it suffers from instability. Now, I can't really confirm this, but my theory is that the rudder of this aircraft doesn't function correctly. And as such, when you are in a dogfight, in a rolling dogfight, and you try to get your guns on target, and especially with this aircraft, you actually have to have the same attitude of the enemy, which means you have to have your wings leveled with the wings of the enemy if you want to hit those wings. I found myself not being able to get guns on target. Every time you do a roll with this aircraft, your aim point just seems to be jumped around, just seems to be shaken around, and it throws off your aim quite heavily. And this really is the huge problem with the Attacker. Whilst I like the airframe itself, and now by no means it's the best airframe around, I personally still think that the Meteor Mark III is a better aircraft all around. This aircraft provides a nice balance between overall maneuverability and speed. In fact, this is actually a very good aircraft to pair together with Meteors, where you can chase the enemy, and if they turn around, either you can try to shoot them down, or the Meteors behind you can shoot them down. The problem is, alone this aircraft is very hard to handle. Now, despite you getting 624 rounds of 20mm ammunition, I found myself having to go back to base and rearm in every single match I've played. You see, not only are the guns just really awkward to handle, the guns themselves don't really do what I expect them to do. You see, there was a point a couple of patches ago where Hispano cans in general got the air target belt. Oh, by the way, if you have to play the default belt, rip you. Just going to put that right out there. Essentially, you're only going to do 50% of the damage, which already is quite bad. So try and go for the air belts as soon as possible. But off topic here. What I'm trying to say is, there was a point in time where Hispanos with air target belts were absolutely deadly. Whatever they touched, they would rip the thing apart. Sadly, since then, and of course this has been quite a while ago now, this is pretty much just me beating a dead horse, but it's relevant to this topic, and especially since I haven't flown this aircraft since that change was made. Aircraft are much more resistant to damage now. Now this works both ways. Of course, it helps the attacker in taking more damage. In fact, I found this thing to be quite an effective bomber hunter, at least in terms of being able to soak up damage. Anything up to 20mm cannons, as long as it doesn't hit the wings directly, you can pretty much just shrug them off. This thing is really resistant to damage, at least in my experience. However, it also means that your enemy is more resistant to damage. And in the few times that you can actually get hits on target, on an enemy that you're dogfighting, on someone who's aware of you, they don't take them down. I found myself emptying entire ammunition loads, chasing down enemy aircraft. Now, of course, I was missing most of those shots, but still, even if only 20% of those rounds hit, that's still a huge amount of ammo. And for some reason, they didn't go down. They just didn't go down. Now, this might just be a placebo effect, of course. Again, I don't want you to take my word as law, so to speak. These are my experiences. When I do my videos, I speak from my experiences, how I compare this aircraft to other aircraft, guns to other guns. stuff like that. So by no means is this a confirmation. But it seems to me like these Hispanics aren't doing the damage they are supposed to do anymore. And this is only aggravated by the positioning of the guns, the awkward handling of the aircraft, how it just is very unstable when rolling, which is one of the key features that you have to dominate when you are trying to dogfight an enemy. And as such, I found myself really struggling with actually taking down enemy aircraft. Now, I've had no problem surviving matches. Again, this thing is very resistant, and it can easily outmaneuver enemy jets like the MiG-9s, the F-84s. It can easily do that. And anything slower, you can simply outrun. Of course, top speed isn't all that great, but we'll go to that a little bit later. But I found myself not being able to kill anything either. Now, let's for one moment ignore the guns and talk a little bit more about the aircraft itself. Top speed isn't the greatest around. In fact, as you can see by the wings, they are straight wings. You can reach those 922 km per hour if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 922 km per hour top speed at sea level with a fully upgraded aircraft. But again, the acceleration isn't all that great at higher speeds. And you're very close to your red line as well. This is not the kind of aircraft you can really dive with either because of the straight wings, since you do run the risk of simply ripping them off. That being said, I have to say one good thing about this, which is the energy retention. I do quite like how this thing just sticks on to energy. Now, of course, this isn't really a thing at higher speeds, but at lower speeds where you can simply, for example, when you're doing rolling scissors, when you're trying to dogfight an enemy, you keep your speed quite well, which is probably one of the factors why I found this thing to be so surprisingly effective in dogfights. Oh, by the way, here's something that I didn't quite mention. You see, this thing does actually get an air brake, but I have no idea where it is. And I'm not the only one. I actually had a guy in the match asking me about the same thing. I don't know if this is a glitch, if this thing is supposed to have an air brake, if it's simply a visual glitch, or if the air brake isn't really modeled, at least in terms of visuals, because you can deploy the air brake, and you feel the effects, of course, of it slowing your aircraft down, but you cannot see it anywhere. Guys, actually tell me in the comment section down below if the attacker is supposed to have an air brake, where it is located, and if it actually works on your end, because I cannot see it. So, given the pros and cons of the attacker, how would I suggest you to fly it? At the start of the match, you're going to be faster than the Meteors. This aircraft is definitely faster than the Meteors, and that's one of the good things it has. Being a naval aircraft, of course, it also gets the benefit of being able to land on carriers and rearm much more quickly. So, it's definitely an aircraft that can easily go back to base, rearm, stay in the fight, it's very resistant to damage, all of that good stuff. Now, starting out the match, I would definitely suggest climbing. You need to have a little bit of engine reserve. Now, don't climb right away, since, as I said before, you can't really sustain climbs all that well at higher degrees. So try to get up to around 600 km per hour. I found that's the ideal speed where you can maintain your climb, and try to climb at around 10 degrees. That way you can actually climb pretty well. Now, of course, you aren't really going to reach bombers as quickly as, for example, the F9F8 Cougar, which I covered in the last video, actually in the second to last video. But this is not a 9.0 jet either. So for a 7.0 jet, it's average. That's really what I can say about it. The flight performance is average. Now, once up to altitude, it depends a bit on your gun convergence if you can actually head on or not. As said before, guns are mounted on the wings, and as such, they are not ideal for head-on situations. But if you set your convergence quite high, stuff like, I wouldn't go past 800 meters, but around 800 meters seems to be a good spot to set your gun convergence to. Then you can try to do some head-ons. But remember, your effective range is going to be double your gun convergence, so you can only really start hitting stuff at 1.6 kilometers. As the battle goes along, there are a couple of things you can do. Either you can try and single out enemies, you can try and bait enemies for your teammates, or you can try and support. I do have to say the Attacker is quite a versatile aircraft. It's not stuck to just one role. You can be a supporting aircraft in that you have a decent amount of ammunition, even if it does go away very quickly without doing much damage. You can still harass the enemy, you can still stick on enemies that are dogfighting with your friendly Meteors, stuff like that. Alternatively, you can also make the enemy focus on you, usually what I like to do, and, well, of course, in my situation it's a little bit different. People tend to recognize me in matches, which, by the way, hi, guys. If you see me in a match, don't be afraid to say hi in the chat. I usually always respond, because I really like interacting with the community. I gotta say, it's one of the highlights of my day. But, off topic here. Of course, my situation is a little bit different. I'm a YouTuber, people know me, people tend to chase me down if they recognize me in the game. Although I have to say, I don't really have a problem with that. I do like to bait you guys. I do like to bait you guys for my teammates, so don't be afraid to go after me, as long as you don't make it your habit. Just don't do it on purpose. If you see me, don't be afraid to go after me, but don't throw your own game away to do that, okay? Okay. But yeah, the attacker is quite good at evading. And in fact, using the air brakes, which, given the air brakes aren't all that strong, I have to say that mixed air brakes are a little bit stronger, if not a lot stronger than the air brakes of this thing. But if you face off against an inexperienced pilot who doesn't know how to face off against the attacker, which is actually quite likely given that the attacker is very rarely flown. In one part due to it just not being very overwhelming, there being better options around, like the Meteor, and probably due to the end of that line being the Sea Venom, which is honestly, probably, quite likely, actually factually, the worst jet you can fly at that battle rating. Even at 8.0, I think it's not that great. God damn it, I fucking hate the Sea Venom. But the point is, people rarely face off against the attackers, and as such they don't really know what this thing is capable of. Now of course I wouldn't suggest you to get into the attacker if you're a newbie jet pilot. Definitely Meteor is a better choice. But the attacker is a good aircraft to teach you how to play the defensive style, how to play support, how to play evade. And you know what? In the end, even the fat lady can dance. And this has been it for the attacker. Now before you go, hold on, don't go away. Stop. Don't you even dare. Stay on the video. There's an announcement I have to make. And we used to have this transition. We used to have this tradition on the channel where you guys could actually choose what vehicle I would feature in the next video. I discontinued for the simple reason that I like to play whatever I want to play, and feeling myself forced to play whatever wins in the polls generally makes me very unmotivated. But I've come up with a new system! Yes! If you check the info card on the top right corner, right at this moment, you should see a poll. Look at the options. Yes, we're going to do it like this. Instead of putting specific vehicles in the poll for you guys to choose, I'm actually going to give you guys the option of choosing the thematic. For example, if you want to see a jet video next, if you want to see a tank video next, if you want to see a specific tier, if you want to see maybe a guide, maybe something to teach you, maybe some hidden tricks, whatever comes to mind. I'll put some options up in the poll, vote for what you want to see in the next video, and I'll take it into consideration. Also guys, I have to be honest with you, I have an addiction. I actually do. I fucking love reading your guys' comments. To a unhealthy extent. I found myself for the past couple of days constantly refreshing the comments page. And the thing that doesn't really help it is that we've been receiving less comments on the videos lately. In fact, half of the comments. If you see the stats that I put up on the screen right now, we're receiving less comments, and I don't exactly know why. So I actually want to ask you guys a favor. If it doesn't take up too much of your time, write a comment. In fact, hold on. What if we do this? I pick a random question from this video, and I'll answer it in the next video. As like the end card or something like that. How's that sound? Alright guys, I've taken up enough of your time. You guys go play. It is Saturday probably when I upload this video, so go take out your attacker or go take out something else and feast on the attacker players that are now playing the attacker after having watched this video. Like this video if you did, dislike it if you didn't, I can't really stop you from that. If you're new around here, hello, my name is MikeGoesBoom, nice to meet you. Why don't you click that subscribe button? Also, if you are not new around here, or if you are, really, either case works. You see that little bell icon beside the subscribe button right below. Click that so that you're always notified with email every time I upload a video. I know, that sounds extremely annoying, but it really helps the channel out. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video, which I can't promise when I will make it. Sadly, midterms are fucking me over. But anyways, my name's been MikeGoesBoom, and as always, thanks for watching.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time. You can walk the path among the lies with your shattered frame of mind. Or instead you could always stay. We can wait right here and play until somehow you can find a slightly better frame